Ahoy! And welcome to the Boating Hour with Captain Rick. The Boating Hour brings you the latest and greatest essential information about everything that sails, floats, or motors upon the high seas of Southern California. From landlubbers to old salts, there'll be something for everyone. So climb aboard and get ready to sail with Captain Rick.
Ahoy out there, and welcome to the Boating Hour. I'm Captain Rick, and I want to thank you for joining us here in the new year. Happy New Year, everybody. I hope you had a wonderful holiday season. We're here every Saturday at 4 p.m., and please be sure to visit us on the web at theboatinghour.com, and now on social media, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Rumble. The Boating Hour with Captain Rick. And thanks to our sponsors for our show today. For a healthy gut, the best probiotic on the market, Livia One Probiotics, natural, organic, and allergen-free. And Raycom Radios, reliable two-way commercial radios throughout Southern California without drop and dead zones. Commercial radios, Raycom Radios. We'll be talking about our introduction to radios that we're going to be doing at yacht clubs. All next week, I'll be talking about what's coming up with Raycom Radios. We're going to get scouts out there to get their ham license. We're going to talk all about VHF radios and, of course, getting your ham license, but for businesses, commercial two-way radios, Raycom radios. Well, Happy New Year for the New Year's show. I've got a special guest. I'm honored to have Bart Hall back on my show today. Bart, thanks for coming on the show.
Well, Rick, thanks for having me. Always enjoy it.
You know, it's so exciting because, amongst the boating community, you're a legend, and you go back to your, I want to hear, you were on last year, but I want to open up the show with how your dad got started, because I understand it was right after the war he started these shows.
Well, yeah, I know. You have to understand, my dad was born in Connecticut, but his family moved down to Miami, Florida to run a kosher hotel.
Oh, wow.
And but he grew up, so then he's in Miami, so he grew up on the beach. He would run along the shore and dive in the water and knock pompano up on the sand, put him into a wagon that had water in it, and he'd dive for lobster, and he'd fish with a can with string. And he'd take all that stuff over to Joe's Fish Market, and that's how he did that. And then so when he came out here to they moved out to California. After the war, it was sort of in the war. 1945, I was born, and he was back in town, and he was working for a company called Crowd Management Incorporated, and they did ushers, ticket sellers, and gatemen for all the sporting events: the Rams, the Dodgers, the SC, UCLA. They did everything, boxing, wrestling, everything, for all the racetracks. But so he went to my boss one day and said, we do all these sporting events. Why don't we do something for sportsmen? Why don't we do a sportsman show? And that was in 1945. I was born in June of 45. The first show was in April of 46. And we've been going there ever. So in the last, we've had 77 years of shows in Southern California.
God, that is amazing. And let's talk about your shows coming up, and then let's talk about how you got into running the shows. But what shows do you got coming up, and where are they?
Well, the first show of the year is going to be kind of a nostalgic one, because all of the boat dealers wanted us to try to get the original LA Boat Show dates. And so we were able to secure that at the fairgrounds and in Pomona, the Fairplex in Pomona. And we're doing the LA County Boat Show will be January 17th to the 19th. And then we're going to go down to the Long Beach Convention Center for what they call the Grand Denny Mall, which has boats and fishing and hunting and travel and international travel. And so that occurs on January 30th to February 2nd. And then we go to San Diego for we're going to call it, the name's changed slightly. It's called the Super Show. It's the San Diego County Boat Show and the Hall Family Outdoor Show. And then in September of next year, the dates still have to be determined, we're going to be doing a end-of-season boat sale in the parking lot of Anaheim Stadium.
Oh, wow.
we'll have to wait and see when the Angels are out of town.
I'm a big Angel fan, and I used to go watch the Ducks as well. But, I'm an Angel fan for the wrong reason. I just can't afford the Dodgers anymore. I'm an LA fan. I was at the 1988, what was it, October? The famous Kirk Gibson home run. I was behind third base. I remember it like it was yesterday. So I am a Dodger fan, and I do follow them. But, boy, I tell you, I became an Angel fan when – the ticket prices at the Dodgers are kind of out of this world, man. Well, that's great. Are you going to have classic boats in the parking lot too? Are you going to let anybody, the boats on? In the old days, boats on trailers were very common. All kinds of people had boats. It's not as much anymore now. People have upgraded and their boats and slips. But what kind of boats are you going to have in the parking lot?
What we're doing is our specialty is boats under 35 feet.
Oh, great.
So we specialize in trailerable boats, and we'll have over those 4 shows, Rick, we'll display 1,000 boats from over 15 key Southern California dealers representing over 80 national and international manufacturers. So it's quite a big deal in terms of boating here in Southern California.
Yeah, I grew up with small boats, of course, dinghies. Actually, my guest last week for the Christmas show, she started out on dinghies and started teaching, got instructor awards, and then went up to San Francisco. She talked all about it last week where she went out with friends and, there was a capsize and, I guess the skipper fell in the water, and it was a rescue that could have been fatal. And she talked about that, and she started out as a dinghy sailor, and now she works for, Naos Yachts, which I'm going to talk about all year long. I'd like to talk to them and maybe get them in the show to do something, with Captain Rick. But this is exciting. So the January shows that you're going to do, that are both of them. What the Pomona show was first, and then the LA show.
And the Pomona show is January 17th to 19th, and then the Long Beach show is January 30th to February 2nd.
Oh, got it. Okay.
And then the last show in San Diego is February 13th to the 16th.
Oh, got it. And then of course the September show in Anaheim. Yeah. God, that's fantastic. How did you survive? The COVID years. I'm a COVID commodore of one of the clubs. It's funny because camping and boating was through the roof. Because that's the only thing people could do. We were locked down for 3 years, and a lot of the yacht clubs got increased membership if they had, outdoor ability. But as a show, you needed people to come. How did you keep alive during the lockdowns? Because you didn't have a show for a couple of years, right?
No, we didn't, and it changed things quite a bit. So we're still in a rebuilding mode at this time because of what COVID did to us, and COVID and some other things, and so. Yeah, we're pretty excited about it. This should be a really good show. Over the next 3 years, we have a lot of plans to get going, and we got a lot of companies coming to exhibit with us that haven't been there before, like Bass Pro Shops and stuff.
Oh wow!
So
okay,
it's going to be interesting to see how all that evolves.
There was a change even before COVID, where it seemed like the boating industry, the sailing, the racing, even the cruising, there was so much competition for all kinds of other stuff. Prices of everything from living to, schools and stuff was going up. And it seemed like the boating industry was going into a slump. And then, of course, we had the lockdowns. And then all of a sudden, camping and boating, went through the roof. And now every club I talk to, all the guests I talk to, it's healthy, it's thriving, and I think the young community are starting to get back into, going out on the water. You don't have to be a millionaire to get into boating. I think that's one of the myths. So, these boat shows you find. Do you have is the fishing component of the shows? How much of a footprint is the fishing community, in your shows?
Well, it varies from show to show. So the L.A. County Boat Show at the Fairplex in Pomona is simply boats. Now there are fishing boats there, but we don't have fishing exhibitors there. But in the Long Beach show, we have lots of fishing exhibitors. That's a big part of what we do, and the same in San Diego. The Long Beach show is 77 years old, the San Diego show is 46 years old. And fishing is a big component of that. Now we're expanding that into hunting and camping and overland and off-road and all kinds of stuff. So that's how we started. That's how my dad did that in 46. And we're going back to that model because we think that we can. Our goal and our job is to nurture the outdoor recreation community and to expand it, to get people involved who wouldn't normally be involved. And that's what we try to do. And it's of course you have to make a living at it, but still, the passion of that is what separates us from a lot of other shows and stuff, because we really care about getting people out in the great outdoors. There's nothing like being on a boat in the morning and watching the sun come up, and there's nothing like being on a boat in the evening and watching the sun go down. And it's just that's what we want to do. We want to get more people involved in outdoor recreation, all forms of it. So voting's just one part of that, but it's a big part of it.
That is exciting. Let's talk about your history a little bit. Did you grow up with Dad camping and boating and in the outdoors? How did you grow? It must have been amazing having that exposure growing up with the shows. Were you intimately involved as a youngster?
Well, yeah, because in those days you didn't get babysitters. That isn't what happened. So my parents, and you have to remember there wasn't any TV then, or not much TV. So my dad would he would go up to Rock Creek, and he'd set up a camp, and they called the ultimate campsite. And use whatever stuff was available in those days, and he'd invite sports writers to come up and to share in his campsite. He'd cook for them and stuff. And they'd go over to McGee Creek Lodge. This is up in the Eastern Sierras. So I grew up fishing in the Eastern Sierras with my dad. And we also fished all the piers in Southern California. We fished some surf fishing, but mostly we fished the piers and the jetties. And then I remember this first thing, Rick. My parents, I think they just wanted some free time away from me, And we were in a cabin up in the Mammoth Lakes, and there was a rowboat there, and I said, "Could I take the rowboat out?" And they went, "Sure." So I think I was 7 or 8, and I remember going out there in the rowboat by myself and catching a limit of fish, and I was hooked. That was it.
Wow.
It was one of the greatest days of my life.
I can only imagine. I got in a little trouble once in a while going to Catalina, thinking I could make it to Catalina and back in one day. That was one of my first early memories. Fortunately, I was a scout and knew people on the other side. But it's boating and camping is something that I'd like to see. Everyone in my neighborhood, all the scouts, the Girl Scouts, the Boy Scouts, it seemed like maybe it's just because I was around that. And I'd like to see that come back because I coach. I know a lot of families, and I think they're slowly getting back into the outdoor life. I wish people would get away from their smartphones and television, of course, and just get out there and do outdoor sports. So that's great what you're doing. I gotta mention this, Mark, because not everybody. When I talk about Bart Hall, we talk about the upcoming shows, but you're a musician, and I bumped into one of your friends from, I guess, when you were a teenager. Matt from he's now with near Simca, the temple out in the Thousand Oaks area. And when he found out, when he first met me, and I think I had you on the show last year, he said, I played music. I didn't know you were a musician. What did you play?
Well, I played the Tools of Ignorance.
Okay.
That would be drums and percussion.
Okay. Oh, you're a drummer.
I didn't intend that ever. I never intended to be a musician. That was not my goal. Everybody thought I was going to be the next, super pro football player.
All right.
And then and then I got hurt, and then that didn't happen. And I have the ability to play music just naturally. I've never taken any lessons, and I ended up playing with a lot of famous jazz players and doing a lot of studio work in Hollywood. and it worked. It was a really fun time in my life, but it was not a good lifestyle for a husband and a father. So one day I went over to my dad and said, Dad, I don't think I want to be a musician anymore. And that's when I started working with him.
Oh, great. That's an interesting story. Yeah, the musicians, it's a competitive business. My dad was a musician. He was a medical doctor. He played with the Los Angeles Doctor Symphony Orchestra, and they did benefits. A lot of their concerts were to raise money for hospitals and medical benefits. So I grew up with music, a lot of classical music, and didn't play very well, but played piano and violin. But of course, I'm an absolute expert on the kazoo.
Well, the kazoo is difficult to play.
Yeah. I did it in the Scouts. In the Scouts, I played. I found my bugle from the scouting years. And I right now got it framed on the wall. So I found my bugle. So how many people, come through the Bard Hall shows in a given year? It must be a big number.
We never give out the attendance figures. Okay. The last time we did that was 1946, and I honor my father's request for that because here's what happened. He started in 1946. He published his attendance figures.
Oh.
Well, there was a guy then that started a show up the next year up in San Francisco, and my dad went up there and he spent several days up there looking around, checking the show out. And people came to him and said, "How come they had more people than you had?"
Oh, my goodness, got it.
And he said they didn't, because my dad was an expert at crowd control. That's what he did. That was his real job. Was ushers, ticket sellers, and gate man. He could walk into a parking lot and say, "Tell you how many people were there within 100 people."
Oh, so no kidding.
He was really quite the guy. And so we just we don't give out attendance figures. We think we get enough people there for everybody to be happy, but not everybody's always going to be happy. But most of the time, people think we do a pretty good job.
You do. You Bard Hall shows. It's absolutely. I would have loved to have met your dad. I think I would have asked him to adopt me. I think my dad would have been overwhelmed. He would have said, "Take him." But yeah, yeah.
Well, my dad was quite the guy. He really was. He was a absolute charismatic individual, and he captured the attention of a lot of people. And all I'm trying to do is just keep it all going,
Yeah, and I'd like to help you. I'd like to promote you throughout the year. Get some of myself and some of my friends. I'm with the Coast Guard Auxiliary, and of course with some of the shooting sports. So I'm talking all about the shows coming up. So I'd like to promote that and get some of my friends out there. The boat shows are important, and I guess. How do people get what's the website? How do people find out about either attending or participating?
Well, it's hallshows.com. Hallshows.com. That tells you how to attend. Also, there's stuff in there for exhibitors. You can get your exhibitor kits and all your online ways to sign up. So that's all there. Hallshows.com.
Okay, that's pretty easy. And I remember your shows at the Long Beach show. You had a whole outdoor area with all kinds of activities. The one that caught me was the exhibitor that was he had a dogs, and they were flying in the air and catching things and then swimming. You had the food court out there, and then the kids could fish. Are you going to have that again at the shows? Because that was so exciting. All the kids were running around having fun.
Well, that's. So this is very interesting. My dad told me a long time ago, he says, "No man's going to go to one of our shows and buy a boat without his wife being there." So what we got to do is we have to make sure that we provide entertainment for the entire family. And so that's what we did. That's the hallmark of what we do. And I remember going outside last year on the patio. I couldn't walk very well because of my knees, and I was in a walker thing. And you had the kids fish free trots on. You had the Great American Duck Races. You had a Fishing in the City with Brian Young, teaching kids how to cast. You had a soft air range. You had an archery range, a BB gun range, and then you had the ultimate air dogs you're talking about down there. And it was just so much fun. And I thought, that was probably the most fun day I've had in the shows in my entire life. Was Long Beach last year on Saturday. And Del Mar too. Del Mar Saturday last year was fabulous. We get a lot of families. Some of these shows that are out here that are doing stuff is mostly male-oriented, male-dominated. But we really go out of our way to make sure that families attend our events.
Yeah, it really was exciting. I remember I was sitting at one of the tables taking a long break. I had a lot of friends that had booths, and I was visiting them. I got a couple of guests on the show, from your show. And I remember someone came out, and they were kind of angry. They started yelling. They said, "You've been gone for 3 hours." They said, "Well, my family came. My kids are having so much fun. I forgot, it was one of the partners. I forget which booth it was. But the family came, and he was having so much fun. He didn't realize 3 hours went by." And, I laughed, and they kind of turned and looked at me because the other partner was kind of, angry. He said, "Look, you've been gone for 3.5 hours." And he had no idea. He was having so much fun. The kids were running around there and catching the fish. But yeah, what was the dog? I mean, were they dog rescues? I mean, that was an unbelievable presentation with what he did with the dogs. What was that?
No, that's just the ultimate air dogs. And what people do is they bring their dogs to jump in the water and do that stuff, and that's how they make it happen.
Wow, and you had some recruiting for the park rangers. So
yes, we did.
Yeah, that was pretty exciting. You had a booth out there. I bet the inside and outside, people were signing up. They had a wonderful display of animals, and I asked them if I identify as a younger man, if I could join. But if I had seen that, early on, I might have become a park ranger. That was I had no idea that existed. So we have park rangers. I guess they work for the state of California. So they had a wonderful booth and talked about conservation and about what they do with the parks. Wow, this is fantastic. Bart, I want to thank you for coming back on the show. I'm going to promote you throughout the upcoming months, and in all your shows, you're going to see me at them. And I'm going to try to talk to my friends at the Coast Guard Auxiliary, and I'm talking to a lot of different yacht clubs to see if we can get them out there. But yeah, you keep the legacy going. The hall shows are amazing, and I remember my dad. The two things I remember with my dad: one was the hall shows. We had gone to a few when I was a kid, and the other one was the Armed Forces Parade in Torrance, the oldest, longest running parade. I was in it as a scout. So some of the fondest memories that I had with my dad was, sailing and the scouts and camping, and the hall shows. And you're part of my memories, my wonderful memories with my dad.
Well, thank you, Rick. That's important. To me, that's very important.
Yeah, and I do remember at one of the dinners coming back. I was so young, and I remember my mom. We had company over. And I remember her saying, "I hope he didn't buy a boat." I remember that. My mom was such a wonderful lady. Everybody loved my mom. Well, this is fantastic. I want to wish you a happy new year, success with the shows. You're going to see me and a lot of my friends. And I just want to thank you for coming back on the show.
Well, thanks for having me, Rick. I've always enjoyed it. And this is I hope to see you soon.
Okay, hallshows.com. So, well, that's all the time that we have for you today. I hope you enjoyed our show. As always, we're so very fortunate to have such wonderful and exciting guests. I want to thank Bart Hall for coming on the show today. And let's not forget the Coasties, protecting our waters, America's lifesavers and guardians of the sea. Thanks to our sponsors for our show today. For a healthy gut, Livia One Probiotics and Raycom Radios, reliable two-way commercial radios throughout Southern California without drop and dead zones. Thanks for being with us today here at the Boating Hour with Captain Rick. We cover everything that sails, motors, and floats from San Diego to Santa Barbara. And we're going to talk all next week about some of the upcoming events that we're going to have at yacht clubs throughout Southern California. Raycom Radio is going to come out and talk all about radios. It's going to be really exciting. Don't forget to visit us on the web at theboatinghour.com. Happy New Year to everybody. Hope you had a wonderful holiday season. Keep your emails coming. Captain Rick at theboatinghour.com. Captain Rick at theboatinghour.com. This is Captain Rick saying ahoy and fair winds to all.